Hi there. Let's talk about building new atheistic cultures. I'm Eric Steinhardt. You can learn more about me and my work at my website, ericsteinhardt.com. This is spiritual atheism, and here the themes I'm talking about are coming from my new book, Believing in Dawkins, The New Spiritual Atheism. It tries to use ideas from Richard Dawkins to build a new and existentially satisfying naturalistic culture. It's not about debating God. It ignores God. God is not relevant here. And Believing in Dawkins is published by Palgrave Macmillan. You can learn more about it, including its table of contents and other materials, such as chapter abstracts, on my website, /Dawkins home. So we're starting with cultural Christianity here. Most atheists live in Christian cultures. Of course, there are plenty in other cultures, but here we're going to focus on Christian cultures. And how do we deal with cultural Christianity? If we're living in Europe, America, similar places, and specifically, how do we deal with Christmas? There's an image of the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, Spain, a fine example of Christian architecture, Christian art, and cultural Christianity. There's three basic ways to deal with Christmas, with the culture of Christmas in Christianity. One way is nihilism. And this comes from Tom Flynn, The Trouble with Christmas. And the idea here is you just do nothing. Just treat the holidays, Christmas or other holidays, as ordinary days. It's not much fun, not very aesthetically or emotionally satisfying. Another alternative is fictionalism. What's that? Well, here are the four horsemen, right, dealing with cultural Christianity. Clockwise from the top left, Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, Dan Dennett, and Sam Harris, right? And so how do they deal with Christmas? Well, they write about it in their book, The Four Horsemen, and it's actually a record of their conversation, right, that led to them being called the Four Horsemen. And they discuss their love of Christian culture in pages 106 to 120. They love Christian art, Christian music, and they love Christmas, especially. And so they talk about how they put up Christmas trees. And of course, they all argue that Christmas came from older pagan cultures, and that Christmas is now just mostly a commercial, secular holiday, and not very religious at all. Dan Dennett, in particular, talks about how he loves singing Christmas carols and goes out singing Christmas carols. Dawkins said grace, right, the prayer before meals, at dinners when he was at New College. He writes about this, talks about this in the Four Horsemen, page 120, and elsewhere. He was accused of hypocrisy by Rabbi Neuberger, who said, "How can you do this? You don't believe in any of this. How dare you say grace?" And Dawkins replied that the prayer was meaningless to him, but was a courtesy to others. And it's no harm for him to say meaningless words. It shows respect for the Christian cultures around him. Dawkins loves the King James Bible. He talks about this in The God Delusion, 383-7, as elsewhere, and he regards it as a work of literary fiction. He loves the language and the literary imagery and illusions. So this is fictionalism. The Four Horsemen regard the Christian story as fictional. So they're really just doing live-action role-playing, LARPing, or cosplay when they talk about singing Christmas carols or putting up Christmas trees or things like that, or saying grace at meals. So loving Christianity or loving Christian culture here is not hypocrisy, because they're explicit about the fact that they treat this as fictional. But there are still two problems here with fictionalism. Why choose Christian culture over others? And there's Athena, right, the statue of the goddess Athena, the Greek goddess. And why choose Christian culture over other cultures, especially if you think it's evil or that it morally corrupts people? And that's exactly what Dawkins says. Here's Star Wars. You could choose Star Wars culture. You could do cosplay with Star Wars. Or you could do some steampunk. Steampunk looks pretty cool. Or you could go with the Pastafarians and talk about the flying spaghetti monster, or dress up and put a colander on your head, or say the Pastafarian prayer. Or you could do the Beltane Fire Festival, the various fire festivals or other festivals that are done by the Beltane Fire Society in Edinburgh, Scotland. They do Beltane, they do Lugnasa, Imbolc, and so on. The 4 cross-quarter days. They hold festivals. That looks like a lot of fun. So the problem with fictionalism is there are many fictions that seem to be morally better than Christianity and are certainly at least as aesthetically satisfying. So fictionalism is not a good reason to stick with Christian culture. Another alternative is to move beyond cultural Christianity. The new atheists point out that Christmas comes from Yule. Pretty much everybody knows the Yule origins of many Christmas celebrations. And Yule is part of the so-called pagan wheel of the year, the 8 solar holidays. There they are: Yule, Imbolc, Ostara, Beltane, Litha, Lugnasa, Mabon, and Soen. Right? The 8 days corresponding to solstices, equinoxes, and the 4 days in between. Christmas, of course, older than Yule, is the winter solstice. There's, Stonehenge at the winter solstice, and it was a solstice holiday for the Romans as well, with Saturnalia. So here are some druids at Stonehenge celebrating a solstice. Should the new atheists become druids? Should we become pagans? Well, there is Atheopaganism, godless paganism, non-theistic pagans. There's a book. So the Atheopagans use pagan symbols, images, and rituals. Why not be a pagan fictionalist instead of a Christian fictionalist? And many Atheopagan groups are developing alternatives to Christian culture. Paganism does celebrate the beauty and richness of the natural world and uses symbols from nature. It doesn't refer to some supernatural that you can't believe in. So there's Atheopaganism, an earth-honoring path rooted in science, a book by Mark Green. And the Wheel of the Year itself doesn't have to be anything besides scientific. The equinoxes and the solstices actually do reflect natural positions of the sun, extreme positions of the sun, or equal positions of the sun in light and day. We have a Wheel of the Year that can be naturalistic. The winter solstice, the shortest day of light, solstices in terms of light, and thermostus in terms of heat. Right? The winter thermostus, usually the coldest day. Spring equinox, balanced light, equal day. Spring equitherm, equal therm. Summer solstice, the brightest day, longest day. The summer thermostus, usually the hottest day. Fall equinox, and then the fall equitherm, right? Temperatures approximately equal through the year. So you can develop all sorts of rituals, symbols, images, artistic practices, performance art. If you don't like the word ritual, think of it as dramatic performance art. There's all sorts of options for developing non-Christian cultures using all sorts of images and symbols. And if you think that stone circles like Stonehenge are just from the ancient times, bear in mind that people are constructing new stone circles all around the world. Here's the Earth Clock in Burlington, Vermont, where people have had solstice and equinox celebrations, and still do. And this was just recently constructed. So, there's all sorts of opportunities for moving beyond Christian culture, particularly with respect to winter holidays. There's no need to continue those, and they're problematic. And atheists should build new cultures. We should build new cultures of our own. We can take lots of images, symbols, archetypes, and other structures, rituals, and performances from ancient pagans and develop them in new atheopagan ways. We can take them from nature and science as well. There's lots of opportunities here. Thank you very much. This has been about spiritual atheism, new atheistic cultures, new cultures that are spiritually, emotionally, and aesthetically satisfying and yet are naturalistic and atheistic. You can read more about this in my book, Believing in Dawkins, and it's coming out with Palgrave Macmillan. Thank you very much. I'm Eric Steinhardt.